First of all, I would like to say very good morning to one and all. And I must thank the SRM Medical College organizing committee for organizing such a webinar. And I would thank Dr. Saravanan to give me an opportunity. It's my privilege and honor to deliver my experience and my thoughts about the innovation and research in medicine as such. I won't say physiology, but physiology is a mother of medicine. That is a word I would like to say. Physiology foundation, it lays the foundation for medicine. And we are the people in the course of medicine to ornament you with the stethoscope first time in your life. The symbol of doctor is stethoscope, and we teach you how to handle the stethoscope first time in your life, and how to use the stethoscope, and what is the use of stethoscope, and how we listen the normal sounds, acoustics from the human body. This is what we teach. Physiology is not just a subject, it's a dynamic subject which talks about the functionality of the body. And once you understand the functionality of a normal body, it is very easy to understand the abnormal functionality of the body. I hope I'm audible clearly. Can I have a feedback, please? Is my voice audible, clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, fine. Because communication plays an important role. Otherwise, if you are not audible what I'm speaking, then there will be a lacune in my communication. That's why I just clarified. Anyway, um, I would like to just take you through my life journey, how I came to this point. It's all the need of the hour which made me to do many things during my different phases of life. So when I was in high school, actually, I decided that I should become a doctor. I was highly influenced by my biology teacher who used to teach biology so well. And I decided that I should take up the biological science. Biological science means definitely medicine. So that is the motivation I had from my high school biology teacher. And equally I was motivated by my uncle who was an engineer. He was a electrical engineer, but I was more fascinated towards electronics. So electronics became a hobby for me in the high school. I'm just telling you these things because you will get to have an idea like who can reach to what level. So nobody is inferior in this world. God would have given some talent or the other talent which you have to identify during the opportunities given by different situations. So I completed my 10th, and then I was in a both, like I want to become a doctor, I want to become an engineer. Both the things were working in my mind parallelly. So after doing plus 12, actually I was working to join towards medicine. That was my primary target, and hobby was electronics, which was a secondary thing. And after finishing the plus 12, I made an attempt to join medicine. Then my father insisted that I should join engineering, so there was a clash. So I had to actually join engineering. I just completed engineering because there was no course which will cater me for biomedical engineering. Actually I wanted to do together biomedical engineering course, which was not available unfortunately in Bangalore at that time. I'm talking way back in 1980s. It was available in only some 5 cities in India. I could not move to any of those cities because I had to stay there only. So I thought, let me do engineering first and then do medicine later. I just joined engineering, finished my engineering. Throughout my engineering, I was more inclined towards medical instruments only. I was trying to understand the principles, how the ECG machine works, how the medical laboratory instruments work. I was trying to have a hands-on experience with those things during my engineering period. Later on, what I did is I just completed my engineering, jumped to medicine. All my classmates were puzzled. They said, you are the first fellow to just jump into medicine. Why are you going to medicine? So I said, no, I have determined to go to medicine. So I just joined medicine, Bangalore Medical College. And throughout my medical career also, I never left electronics as a hobby. I mean, like I was practicing. It was like an alcohol for me without electronics, I could not sustain. So it was so much embedded in my hands. I was doing a lot of electronics. And of course, when I came to final year, I realized I should concentrate more on the studies. Otherwise, I cannot get through the medicine final year. So only that period I stopped. Of course, I did try something like making an electronic stethoscope and recording the patient's heart sounds on a Walkman player. I mean, those days we used to have something like a tape player which can record things. So I was trying to record the heart sounds, and I was well known even at that period of time during my internship postings. All the professors in the Victoria Hospital where I took my internship, they all knew that I was an engineer and a doctor. Any small problems like ophthalmoscope not functioning, the lamp not glowing, they used to come and give it to me. I used to rectify those things. I mean, for free of cost. They were utilizing my services. They were appreciating. Even in neonatal ward, actually the bilirubin, non-invasive bilirubin instrument which was there, a Japanese instrument, very nice instrument. It was not functioning because the batteries had gone. So I replaced the batteries, rechargeable batteries, and they were so happy to use it because it is a non-invasive technique. Instead of taking blood samples for bilirubin test, they were so happy non-invasively, just by a click, they could get to know what is the total bilirubin in the small newborn babies. So like this, I have given services even during my internship. And then I thought, okay, medicine is not enough. I mean, mere MBBS doesn't take me anywhere. I was not very happy to go further. So I thought, let me do some specialization. So I thought microbiology fits in somehow, I thought. So I took up microbiology diploma course, not a MD course. I did a diploma in microbiology, that is called bacteriology. At that time, it was called bacteriology. After which I had to settle down in my life, of course, like all the other people settled down. I looked for a job opportunity. I got a lecturer's post. 1 year I worked as a microbiology teacher in a lecturer's post, and I was not at all happy with that. So all my talent was going waste. So I decided, somehow to my great luck, one person introduced me to St. John's. He was actually a physiologist. So he was an MSc PhD physiology person from NIMHANS. And he said, sir, you have so much of talent. Why are you wasting your time here? I will introduce you to a great person. Come, let us go there. Like that, he introduced me to Dr. Anurag Kurpad. I think all the audience here, I just, this is actually a combination of online and offline. I am actually seeing all the students. I'm addressing this particularly to the students. No student says that I do not know Anurag Kurpad, because he is the author of Guide to Now. So Anurag Kurpad was my guide, and Dr. Mario was my guide. And with these two people advice, I have reached this level today. They are my successors in my life. So Anurag Kurpad was introduced to me through a mass spectrometer. Mass spectrometer is something which is a higher end instrument which can analyze atomic percentage of a breath sample or a blood sample or whatever it is. So I was introduced to St. John's in 93. So there a life turning point happened in my life. So Dr. Anurag Kurpad, when he was introduced to me, I had put a condition to the introducer that please don't introduce me as a doctor, because my professional class had already started by that time. Because whenever I used to practice in the clinic, I used to get patients. These patients used to come to my house also, and a lot of electronic stuff in my house. So I was actually in a difficult situation to handle these two things. I was able to handle, but the problem is the confusion to the people. So the neighbors started asking me, are you twins? Like one engineer and one doctor. I was not able to say anything. So I said, no, I'm not a twin. I'm a doctor only. So all this electronic thing is taken care by my cousin brother. Yeah, that's why the electronic stuff come to my house. Like that, I had to tell. The same thing happened with me when I was introduced to Dr. Anurag Kurpad also. I was introduced as a engineer, medical engineer, biomedical engineer. Then after completing the target task which was assigned to me, then I told the introducer, you can introduce me anything now you like. Then he said, sir, as you are thinking, he is not just an engineer. He is also a medical doctor with a microbiology specialization. Then Anurag Kurpad was actually surprised. He said, how come you are an engineer with so much of talent and you could solve my problem? And it was in the nutrition research lab actually where I solved the problem. And then he said, you have to join with me. for research. Then I had a lot of commitments, so I did not join immediately. But I was a consultant for 1 year almost. Then I joined as a junior research assistant in Dr. Anurag Kurpat's lab, which was a nutrition lab, human metabolic lab. It was indirect calorimetry. That is, we could measure the human calories burned over a period of time in different critical experiments, which were tagged with the MIT from USA. So I was a part of that research for almost 16, 17 years. And then the journey began there. And it was an excellent platform for me to look into different problems and look into different physiological aspects. And that is where the challenges were thrown to me one after the other. So I took these challenges very in a healthy way. And I started working day and night. And that is the period where I got my 2 national awards also by the end of 2000 year. So this is all my background. So I think enough of my background I have told. Let me move on to today's talk by sharing the screen. So actually, presently I'm working in Narayana Medical College as head of the Department of Physiology. I'm here since 8 years now. I hope my shared screen is visible to all the audience.
Yes, sir. The screen
Yes.
is visible.
Okay. So let me take you through the different aspects of my presentation. So I am here since 8 years. And I handle about 250 first year MBBS students. And what is biomedical engineering and is it for you? So now I'm addressing to the medical students of first year or second year or postgraduates or even some faculties also. You may be wondering, is biomedical engineering meant for medical students? Yes. So in my journey, I have seen some of the medical students from St. John's, they were motivated by me. Like they said, sir, you have become an engineer and a doctor. Can I become a doctor and an engineer? I said, yes, no way. I mean, nobody will stop you. You can become. So one of my MBBS student, after finishing MBBS, he went to IIT Bombay. Then he did his course. And then he was involved in bladder sensor. That is human bladder. He made a implantable pressure sensor. And he got a patent for that. So nothing stops. So I'm sure that some of you in this audience group might thought that they should become an engineer. They had inclination to join engineering, and they know electronics as a hobby, or they have an urge to learn electronics. It doesn't mean that you should know electronics through and through. You can take somebody's help, or you can combine your knowledge of medicine and interact with engineers who have the similar interest to develop something for you or to help you out. So like that, these specialty subjects are coming up now. There are so many branches. So I'll just give a glimpse of these branches. So we have got biomedical, bioengineering, biophysics. Biophysics is a part of first year MBBS. I think all of you are aware of it. Some questions, though previously one biophysics person used to teach MBBS students all these past years, but now that person is not there, and not much importance is given to biophysics in first MBBS students for the learning aspect. But some of the universities still mention in the syllabus, biophysics is one of the syllabus to be covered. Like, what is this biophysics going to help? Because a lot of technical things are there, like recording biopotentials and recording the simple muscle twitch, or like exercise based experiments wherein we use a lot of instruments. Physiology is the one where the students are supposed to handle many instruments. Like in our time, we used to have a lot of things like the kymograph and the rotating drum and the electromagnetic stimulator and so many things. Of course, now all the newer generation medical students do not have it. Everything has become virtual. We just show you the graphs recorded in those time, like the frog recordings or the heart recordings, and you people have to just imagine. In fact, with collaboration of Dr. Sandhya Avdhani, I would like to mention that we were the last people to take video of the frog dissection. And then it is, I think some of you would have seen that the videos what we recorded. I was recording the videos in St. John's, and we took special permission to do the dissection of the frog at that time. And then we recorded the videos, and every year we used to conduct workshop on animal experiments for postgraduates as well as undergraduates, and all that is gone. It is all like a dream now. The new technologies have come. Everything has become virtual. Just like how I'm sitting virtually here, you are sitting in reality there, but you are seeing me virtual. I'm seeing you virtual. So there is something augmented reality also now. Three-dimensional virtual visibility is also possible. This augmented reality. Many things have come now. I think you must have heard about holographic projections. So now these are the advancements in technology. And bioelectromagnetism. This is another subject. Medical physics, medical engineering, medical electronics. Like this, different sub branches have evolved. So if you can, I'm trying to say that these are the sub branches, but all this is not taught everywhere. These are like optional subjects which the engineering students have to choose, and they have to qualify themselves. Abroad, these systems are there, but unfortunately, this specialized branches are not available. I do not know whether it is available in CMC Vellore like this, with the biomedical engineering students opting for this branching subjects. Anyway, so if anybody has got an interest to learn something about, I mean, not interest, like if you get some idea, you as a doctor, you may you have an idea, but there is a problem there. Like you have to contact an engineer who is having the similar interest to help you out. But the problem is their communication gap will be there. Like you have to explain to him what you want, and he will tell this is available, this is what I can do. And then you have to test it, and then you have to give the feedback. In my case, this gap was not there. I used to start from designing the instrument for the need, and then make it with my own hands, test it on animals, test it on humans, then carry out human research, and then do even publication. So I was taking care of end to end. That's how I could save a lot of time, and I didn't have that communication gap. So I was communicating myself, the engineering knowledge and the medical knowledge together, amalgamating, and then trying to get out much quickly and faster. That was the advantage I had. It never matters. But even now, if you are keen, you have to just look into a person who has a similar wavelength as what you are thinking, and then collaborate with him, or you can collaborate with me also. I never stop anybody collaborating with me. If you come out with an idea, I can think of a solution in a easier way, whatever the way I can do. And I have done it for many postgraduate students, and I have been doing even now also. In the later on presentation, I'll tell some of the things. This is how you can think. Medicine and biology have to be combined with physics, electronics, and engineering to come out with some innovations. Research is something, what is existing, we try to prove that is correct, and we try to add something to that. That is called research. But innovation is something, you get a new idea, there is a problem-based solution. This is called innovation. So now the COVID time, I think many innovations happened because that was a need. So we wanted to solve without touching the human. We wanted to get a lot of information like the heart rate, respiratory rate, body temperature. Simple body temperature. We were actually putting a thermometer into the mouth and then waiting for 1.5 minutes to get the mercury column raise up. So today we don't have such things. Like it is so much advanced. Just by pointing a pointer towards the forehead, you can just get the temperature of the body. You've seen that IR thermometer now. So this IR thermometer at industrial level is so powerful. It can even detect the temperature at a distance of 5 meters distance. If I want to check the temperature of an instrument at 5-meter distance without even going near to that, I can measure the temperature of the surface of that machine. So technology is very much advanced. Indian technology is also very much advanced, but utilizing in the medical profession, some people have to give them the problems to implement those technologies into our medical profession. Then only we reach the target. I mean, like we achieve something, we reach some innovation. The engineer will not know where is the problem, what problem the doctors are facing. And the medical people will not know what technology is available to solve this problem. So this is the lacuna, I would say. More interaction, more communication will definitely come out with some innovations. I'm sure in this gathering of say at least 150 students in the classroom now, what I'm seeing, at least about 30 to 40% of the students will come out with some great ideas to solve them, and some innovations they will do, I'm sure, down the lane. Not maybe not in the first year, some idea will be lingering in their mind, and after you are exposed to clinical settings, you may come across. How many of you thought a digital stethoscope will be very useful? Yes, it is already made in Bangalore and it is available. A high level digital stethoscope in par with the Littmann digital stethoscope is made in India. It is purely made in India. Actually, I'm an advisor member for that company. It is by the name Taal, Taal, Taal. That's the name of the stethoscope. If you can actually Google on the net, and you can order it and buy it also. It is a digital stethoscope which has a which can record these heart sounds. You can play it n number of times and you can learn the sounds so well. It is documentable, like evidence-based medicine. Like if you have a patient with the heart murmur, you can actually listen to that, and the sound intensity is so good, and the clarity is so good. It is 10 times better than our ordinary stethoscope. The best stethoscope in the world is Littmann. It can beat Littmann stethoscope, a digital stethoscope, and it is with a rechargeable battery and all that. Nice casing is there, and even if you drop it from height, nothing happens to that. Such a thing is available. So I will talk about many things as I go on. You see this humanoid robot. In anatomy, you learn about muscles. There are hundreds and hundreds of muscles in the human body. By understanding the origin and insertion of the muscles, actually we understand the anatomy of the human body, like smiling, lifting the hand, moving the legs, walking, talking. All this involves muscles. Every single action of the human body, including the tympanic reflex, involves muscles. Like high intensity sound, a tympanic reflex, and it protects our eardrum. So here, this slide makes you understand that on this side, what I'm pointing now, it's actual real human, and a duplicate of her is made. This is a humanoid robot. It is done in Japan, actually, by one of the company. And this humanoid robot is able to smile and giggle and also reply to appropriate questionnaire, whatever you throw on it. And these type of humanoid robots, you may be wondering, are they doing it for just for the sake of fun? No, they are doing for the sake of applying these robots in the reception area in the medical wards and in psychiatry department especially. It is helping them. And you might have heard there are some hotels which are serving the robot served hotels, and no humans are involved there. They come and take the order and they deliver it on the table. So for entertainment and for service, these humanoid robots are used, and they look more humanish. Okay, that's why they're called humanoid robots. And they can do a lot of things like smiling, even the eye gazing. They can turn the eyeball towards you, and they can actually gaze at you. They can give responses to you. And internally, if you see, this is the complexity of electronics and the mechanics. So this is called mechanotronics. This branch is called mechanotronics, and it is implemented in automobile also. You can see how the jaws and the sensors, and there is no brain there. It's all electronics with microprocessors and components. And the outer look was so much different. It looks like a humanoid, I mean like a human. And this is a scientist name from Osaka University. That is a company name is Kokarak company. So that is just a glimpse of how technology can be implemented even to make a structure of a humanoid robot. As you know, Stephen Hawking used to say that today's science can be friction. As you have seen in some of the Bond movies, many things they used to show. Like I used to enjoy seeing Bond movies during my plus 12 time. Like Sean Connery, he was one of the popular Bond at that time. They used to show a watch with a camera. They used to show a watch with a laser gun and radio, this kind of things. So those things were actually like fictitious to us those times. I think some of you would have seen Star Wars. In Star Wars series, they have shown robots like C3PO, R2D2, all these robots they had shown. And also they had imagined, the director had imagined, we can freeze the human body for years together, which which we don't believe. And in reality, it is possible. When I did microbiology at that time, it was a real experiment. The culture which we used to do on the plates, on the microbiology culture plates, we could keep it in the fridge for say 1 week, and we can take it out and again regrow the same bacteria. Don't you think it is a freezing of the organism? All the metabolic events will stand still for 1 week. I mean, the bacteria start multiplying every 20 minutes. And if I have a culture, or if I have the bacterial growth on a culture plate and put it into the fridge, and then the life becomes standstill. No multiplication is there. And after 1 week, I take out and reculture it on another plate, they will grow. That is, I can prolong the life of the bacteria. The same experiment I had seen in IISc Bangalore when I was a high school boy. They did something called Open Day celebration in the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. And I was so curious to see that. I just bunked I took a leave from the school, and then some 3 of our friends, we all went together to see. They were showing us blood grouping. I was so excited by looking at the blood grouping of the human. They did my blood grouping at that time. And then they showed the fishes from the aquarium. They had frozen in the liquid nitrogen. And from the liquid nitrogen, they took out the fishes and then they put it back into the aquarium, and they started swimming again. They said these were frozen 1 month back. I was surprised. But the same thing when I actually saw the Star Wars movie, the king or the emperor will be frozen, and he will be transported from one spaceship to another spaceship for years together, and then he will come back to life again. So such fictitious things I have seen, but those things are becoming reality now. Did you ever thought that we will have this kind of a communication with the Zoom? As our deans are very rightly pointed out, like many things I endorse what he said. And there are many things which have happened which we never even thought about. So this man Einthoven, he was a Dutch physician and a physiologist, and this Einthoven person was the first man to record the electrical potentials from the human body, which indicated the electrical activity of the heart. So he used a heated string galvanometry method. And in 1903, this is the instrument size. The size is actually 10 feet by 10 feet by 10 feet. That was the size of the instrument ECG module. Today, actually, it can be fitted into a matchbox size or even in the watch. So I have done it actually myself in a size of a matchbox. So an ECG module can be made into a matchbox size. With the advancement of electronics and the components which are miniaturized, we can make it. And see this beauty here. And he won a Nobel Prize. When I say Nobel Prize, do you all know that this year, 2021, the Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine was given for thermal receptors new innovation. The Nobel Prize winners actually got a prize in physiology or medicine for receptors, something new they have found in thermal receptors. So this is what they have found. I think every year, most of the prizes, the Nobel Prizes, are in physiology or medicine. So you are proud to say that. And this person also got a Nobel Prize in 1924 for his discovery. And this is how he was actually putting the hands in the saline buckets, that is sodium chloride solution, and the limbs were immersed. And you can see how this imaginary Einthoven triangle, I think some of all the first year students must definitely know this Einthoven imaginary triangle. And that's how we have the lead 1, 2, 3, bipolar limb leads and unipolar and all those things. So this is the dream. And the team of people who were behind him, Einthoven, were so many. Actually, they did this much of work. It is more than 100+ years now. We still depend on ECG. And now we have got, of course, much more advanced technology. We can listen to the heart sounds through a digital electronic stethoscope, and we can record the ECG with the computerized technology. 12 lead ECG we can get in one stretch. and high quality ECG without noise. And not only that, I'll tell you something just interesting. It is little beyond that. We have reached beyond that, called the butterfly. So the butterfly, so keep waiting for that. What is that butterfly? I'll tell you later. And this is the Holter monitor. In 1949 itself, they were able to create a Holter monitor. This kind of a Holter monitor can monitor actually the electrical activity of the heart for almost 24 hours. So they were the doctors who, the cardiologist, usually they used to record it on a patient, and they could retrieve the data from this and analyze, are there any ectopic beats, or are there any arrhythmias in the 24 hours time. So that was a time in 1949. And ECG, now everything is digital. You don't get a manual ECG machine with a heated needle recording on a thermal paper. No, it is almost outdated. So we get computerized. You go to any lab in India now, it is all like computerized or portable ECG machine. Of course, it is not just a tabletop machine. It has become even the mobile also now. So you take any Android mobile, there are some apps. I mean, there are some small devices available which are add-ons, like they can get 12 lead ECG on the mobile phone. You can save it immediately and send it to the cardiologist through the email or whatever it is. And within minutes, from any point of the world to any point of the world, to any doctor, to even to 10 doctors, I can send the same ECG. So that is the power, and no delay at all. And this is just a sample how in a mobile phone we can record the ECG. And the mobile phones have become everything in the life now. It has conquered the whole human living in every aspect, like wealth, health, and entertainment, everything. So you all know this. So way back in 2009 itself, this mobile-based ECG concept came up. The first people were to introduce was the iPhone people, and then a lot of things have happened. Now I'll concentrate on this wearable devices. The wearable devices, I think each one of you must be knowing this, or some of you must be also wearing the watches, which can show you the heart rate, and it can tell you the saturation, and it has got a built-in mobile phone facility. It has got a camera and many more things. But nowadays, watches are being transformed into measuring glucose, non-invasive blood glucose in the blood. I mean, you just wear a watch and that can give you the glucose level in the blood. And you wear a watch, it can give you some other parameters like body temperature and many things like that. Now we call it as health care or health monitoring wearable devices. By old man wearing a watch and he is walking in some road, we get to know everything about him sitting in house. I know where exactly he is moving by the GPS tracking system, and how fast he is walking and what is his heart rate at that point of time. Everything can be monitored and tracked. So such days have come now. And this is one interesting thing which I was trying to say, that is CNOGA. This CNOGA device actually can give you the saturation and non-invasive hemoglobin also. It can measure without the prick or without the blood sample. It can give you hemoglobin. It can give you the glucose level. This CNOGA is a German-based company which has come out with some devices. Of course, it is not very cheap, so that we cannot afford it in the market. Still, it is in the process of refining, and it is succeeded in the laboratory level. But there is one indigenously device which has come out from Orissa, for which again I am collaborating, and I know that I'll tell you about that also. Okay, and this point of care devices like lab on chip concept came. You just take an instrument and then you feed the blood, and it can give so many test reports at the field. They are portable and they are carryable. Like they can do many things. Like recently, in one of the startup company in Bangalore, I just heard this news some 4 days back. They have come out with a you all know pregnancy test. Like you have a stick, it is called preg stick. You just dip it in urine by ELISA method. It will give you a positive result or a negative result within say minutes. Similarly, they have made for malaria, dengue, and chikungunya, all the three types of fever-based diseases to identify. It's called a rapid car test. Within 10 minutes, and that is available now. So many times the identify there is a differential diagnosis of malaria, chikungunya, and dengue fever. So sometimes they miss out one of the disease. Sometimes it can appear in combinations. So they have come out with this device, 3-in-1 rapid car test. So the treatment is based on the result. So like this, things are becoming more easier and faster and digital based and easily affordable. Like this, things are changing. This is the watch which I was mentioning from the same company called the Sinoga. This can measure the blood glucose level. You can see it can measure the blood pressure, it can measure the heart rate, it can measure the saturation, it can record the ECG, and so many things. So this is what is going to be the future. What are they monitoring? All physiological parameters only, physiology only, the human body functions, and of course some chemical molecules like their oxygen dissociation curve you have studied. There you understand the saturation of oxygen with the hemoglobin. That is also measurable. In this COVID time, I think measuring the saturation level of the hemoglobin was a crucial thing. If the saturation drops below 94, they were telling you, please shift him to the hospital. So there was the disease was actually related to the reduction in the saturation, some breathing issues and all that. I don't want to talk much about that, but that is a different domain. But saturation was measured. I'm sure in this crowd of entire crowd, each one of you might have used a pulse oxy instrument and a thermometer and a BP apparatus and all these things. So it became the need of the hour. So none of us had a saturation SpO2 measuring device at home. Because of the COVID, every house has got it now. And every house has got a thermal scanner. And every house has got BP apparatus now. So things have changed. And of course, digital weighing scales, it has become another fashion. Many people who are weight conscious, they are going for a digital weighing scale, which can tell their fat percentage, total body water, and their BMI also it can give. I hope these things are all possible now. Nothing is new to the new generation of the students presently. They are all possible. As we know that younger generation students are much more advanced, they are much more faster in computer skill and the mobile technology, the usage part especially, they are much more advanced. And the situations are coming like parents have to learn from the children the facilities available in the mobile phone or the features available in the mobile phone. And of course, we should not be ignorant about this mobile phone features. As senior members or elderly people, we should try to learn everything from them, and we should not feel bad to learn anything from our children, and we should update ourselves so that they should not misuse the cell phone for illegal activities. So we should keep an eye on, always monitor them. So I'm just cautioning, we should never hesitate to learn anything from any age person, either younger or elder. This is what I believe. Okay, right. So there is a new thing again. This is a Freestyle Libre, we call it as. It's a semi-invasive patch like sticker. So they put it on the arm, and this is like a ECG sticker. Basically, it looks like an ECG sticker, slightly thicker. It has got a Bluetooth link to the mobile phone. It has got a built-in battery, and it has got all the chemicals loaded inside. That is the glucose oxidase enzyme in different format, and a thin micro needle gets into the subcutaneous layer of the skin. A thin micro needle. It is not a metal. Initially, when it is placed, a metal needle actually introduces a flexible micro needle, and the needle is removed. Like how we put the venous cannula, initially we guide the cannula through a needle, then the needle is removed. Exactly the same concept they have used here, and a tiny, about 5 millimeter length, flexible cannula will get into the subcutaneous layer, and it will take the interstitial fluid continuously, and whole day, not just one day, 14 days continuously it will plot the blood glucose level on the mobile phone. This is available and this is being used even in India also. Many diabetologists are using this, and this can be used for continuous monitoring of blood glucose level, which is FDA approved, scientifically approved quality, and it is a validated device. 14 days they can monitor. Where it is very useful for people who are of type 1 diabetic patients, this glucose monitoring is very useful. Like they can actually see how it is fluctuating, how they can titrate the dose of insulin, or they can be taught to take particular diet and how it changes the blood glucose level. The patient learns by biofeedback. The patient will see the graph and then he will understand, oh, if I take this food, it is going beyond this level, so I should not take this food. So how much I should take and when I should take, all these things they learn in 14 days. And this patch will cost about 5,000 rupees, but it is worth. So I feel this is worth, because they learn many things by biofeedback, and this is being used. I'm sure if you explore yourself, you go to a diabetologist and then ask him about this Freestyle Libre, whether he's using, or some of your elderly parents or elderly people at home, they might have undergone this Freestyle Libre patch, and the mobile phone actually stores and gives, and this data is can be stored and it can be shared to the doctor who is consultant also. So this is the device. It works on the Android mobile phone. Okay. See, here also physiology comes. We are trying to talk about the blood glucose level and how it has become so different now. See, previously we used to do GTT, glucose challenge test, glucose tolerance test. That is, we used to make a person drink glucose, and every half an hour we used to take the blood samples. And then we used to do by the God pod method, that the traditional, that is glucose oxidase technique. And each test used to take about 15-20 minutes to give the reports. All spectrophotometric methods we used to do. During our internship, the patients who were there in emergency ward, they used to tell, we want to know whether it's a hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia. You take the sample and go and do it and come back with a report. So we were actually working on our toes. Like we had to learn the skill of drawing the blood. Of course, I was quite comfortable in the skill of drawing blood. Each and every medical student should learn and take an opportunity to learn venous prick, that is venous puncture. You should be able to master it. It's a life-saving technique. So you can administer IV fluids or you can take blood samples. Administering IV fluid is actually a most important procedure in the entire medical profession to save the life. It's called a lifeline. If you don't get an IV line, I'll explain to you one. I can share one of my situation which happened in OBG department. Early morning, 6 o'clock, a patient came. She had actually delivered a male child at around 2 o'clock in the middle of the night, and her placental separation was not there, so she was bleeding continuously, and she had lost so much of blood, hypovolemic shock she was. When she was brought, actually all her veins were collapsed, so we could not catch a vein. All the doctors were trying to catch the vein and they could not catch the vein. I told, I will do a venesection. The senior doctors told me, still you are not you are not a surgery PG and you don't have the skill of doing venesection, so why you want to do it? So they said, call a PG from surgery department. By the time we could trace a PG from a surgery department, we lost the patient. I was confident to do venesection because I had learned it in the burns ward, but I could not get a venesection kit. But I said, still, okay, I can do it with a sterile blade, but they still didn't allow me to do that. And I cannot forget this event in my life. Just because we did not get a vein in time, the patient was lost in front of our eyes. The patient was telling the last words, which are still lingering in my ear. Please save me, doctor. Please save me, doctor. It was the first child which she had delivered, a male child, fully developed, male, healthy child, 9 months normal delivery, but placenta had not separated. She died of a hypovolemic shock in front of our eyes. So catching a vein is extremely important technique. I suggest all of you, please master this technique. It should be one of the certifiable competency in the clinical practice. That's what I feel. Okay. Yes, I'm just sharing in between here and there some things, so I should not lose much time there. So this is another thing. As we all know, Aadhaar is a symbol of identity in India now, and this is an identity. It is actually an RFID chip. Actually, this is like, you can make out the size of this chip, which is very small, and this has got a radio frequency coil and no battery inside. This works like an RFID. You know the fast tag which is there on automobiles now, in the gates or in the tolls, they actually identify. There is a tag, that is a RF tag. Even for security purpose, we use a tag, and we show the tag, and then the door opens and then we go. Similarly, this is an RFID which they actually, sorry, this is not an RFID. This is a capsule camera. I'm sorry, actually I didn't see the title. This is a camera which has got a battery and a transmitter. This capsule can be swallowed, and this takes a journey through your gastrointestinal tract and transmits all the images to the computer, and we can record entire things. This is done in Apollo Hospital in Chennai. Okay. So this camera computer, this is a capsule camera, it is called, and it is used by gastroenterology people, and it costs about 7,000 or something like that. Okay. So the next is the RFID thing, which I was trying to tell you. This is a RFID implant. If you see the X-ray view, you can see it is implanted in the hand, in between the thumb and the forefinger, below the skin, and it can be injected, and it is as big a, it's a comparison here, the rice grain comparison. So in America, in defense people or the soldiers, this is already implemented. All the American citizens, they are planning to implant this. Shortly, it may come in India also, an alternate to Aadhaar. So it is embedded in the human body as an identity. This carries a lot of information about the person's identity, like the Aadhaar card number and things like that. The days are not far. It can happen even in India also, globally also. Okay. And this is the picture how the implanted RFID is shown in the human. Okay. Now coming to the bioprinting. See, you all have heard plastic things. They are actually molded, and we have a lot of plastic materials, and they do molding. So it is like they make thousands, and in the industrial level, they mold plastic containers, plastic vessels, and things like that. But this 3D printing technology became something new again. So they started printing some biological structures, like for example, the hip joint. They printed the hip joint or the knee joint with different materials which can be implantable. So they started printing human parts and customized to the exact measurement what is required for that particular person. They started printing the bones. They started printing the skin. Like this, they culture the keratinocytes in the lab, and they start printing the layer of the skin, and this skin graft was done very successfully on the humans. So this further continued, and they started printing organs. Organ printing started. So now they are actually trying to print a heart and trying to print a liver and things like that. This is called organ printing with 3D technology. And for your information, I want to tell you, there is a hospital called Narayana Nethralaya in Bangalore, where they are doing 5D printing. It is not 3D, it is 5D. 5D means more precision. They print human intraocular lens in the ophthalmology department, particularly suitable for a particular individual, like customized 5D printing of intraocular lens is done. It is already in function. Okay. So they can print organs like liver and all that, as I told. So this is how the this printing of the bones also can be done. So they can print for hip replacement or the femur head replacement. So these kind of artificial structures can be replaced in the human body very successfully. So now this is how the virtual clinic or the telemedicine came into existence, and it was given a lot of importance during COVID time. So there were something called virtual doctors. So they were talking to you virtually, and they were asking your symptoms and signs, and they could even listen to your heart sounds through the electronic stethoscope. Video they could see, and they were asking you to open your mouth and see inside the mouth. So this is how the telemedicine was given a lot of importance, and telemedicine clinics are established in many states now, and they are in use. And a paramedical person will be there to handle the instrument to link up. It's basically an audio visual link, and then the patient will be talking to the doctor, and the doctor will be talking to the patient. Also, they will see mutually also. Okay, some basic treatment can be given with minor diseases, like for example simple fever or cough or something like that. So this virtual medical treatment helps to some extent, and if it is not possible, then they'll refer it to a bigger center or a major hospital. And this is one of the electronic stethoscope. This is another company I mentioned, TAL. So this is another company which is purely an Indian company which is making the electronic stethoscope, and this gives an opportunity to use the regular stethoscope, and again mobile based. You can see how it can be recorded on a cell phone, the heart sounds. When it is graphically recorded, it is called phonocardiogram. We were only reading about phonocardiogram in our first year time. We never had a graphic recording. But today, phonocardiogram is possible on a mobile phone. So graphically, it can be represented, and even minute changes can be identified. See, our ears are not so well trained in our internship time to identify the systolic murmur or the diastolic murmur or the mid systolic murmur, early systolic murmur. All these things we cannot easily identify. We cannot identify so easily during our beginning part of the career. So, but later on we get to know, we slowly understand, learn things. But for a beginner, if it is a graphic representation, they can replay n number of times, and graphically also they can see whether the sound has, the additional murmur has come between the first and the second, or between the second and the first sound. So this can be identified very easily. So identification of the murmur location can be easy with this kind of technology based recording. And this is the telemedicine clinic which I was trying to say. And you can see the stethoscope is coming from the ATM like machine, and the paramedical person is listening to the doctor's voice. Whatever the doctor is instructing, she is doing. And this is how the treatment can be given. Even the dispensing of the tablets also is done through this machine. The doctor writes the prescription, the tablets are dispensed through the machine, and the patient is advised how to take and all these things. This is the butterfly, which I said butterfly. So the stethoscope, what we are using conventionally is this. So this is remaining for years together, like almost now 110 to 120 years. The stethoscope remains almost the same. Even today, you walk into any ward or any hospital, any doctor, he is using the same stethoscope. The doctors community is little reluctant to adapt to the new technology which is available. Though I'm a doctor, I'm saying this negative point. Doctor's mind is preset. They don't want to do experiments on patients because they don't believe new technology so easily. It's a younger generation who have to adopt this new technology with confidence that yes, it works. So older generation doctors, actually we are little reluctant to adopt new technology. Okay, this is working, so what is the advantage of using the new thing? Like that we think. And is there any risk? Those things we'll think. And if the instrument fails, so it is a risk to the patient. So in this angle, we think a lot. But the younger generation have a lot of confidence on electronic gadgets, and they know the best use of those things. And I think they are the people who can change or revolutionize the use of new gadgets in medical profession. So this butterfly device is available in US for about 1.5 lakhs. This device not only can do listening of the heart sounds, it can visualize the heart, it can do echocardiogram. It can not only just do echocardiogram, it can visualize any structure in the human body. It is equivalent to a sophisticated ultrasound machine. This instrument is like portable, carryable. You can see bedside also, you can visualize the structures inside the body. It is not just a small stethoscope like, it is a stethoscope plus which has a capability to visualize inside the body. And this has not been promoted in our country because of the sex determination issue. So they need a license for this device if any doctor wants to buy this. Because of that, the government is holding this device. Otherwise, there are many doctors who are willing to buy this for 1.5 lakhs. But it is available in the market. In the US market, it is easily available. But in Indian market, they have not allowed. Because if they buy this, they can visualize any structure in the human body. And you name it. Like you can do abdominal scan, you can do any other part, like you can do a venogram and contrast everything. I mean, like why, how it can do everything. A ultrasound machine, which is costing about 10 lakhs in India right now, this can do everything in 1.5 lakhs. How? The reason is, I'll tell you a small key point. The probes which are used for scanning for deeper tissue and superficial tissue, they change the probe with the different frequencies, like 2 megahertz or 6 megahertz or 8 megahertz probe. But this has got a new technology which can work with all the frequencies all in one. This can work with all the frequencies. I can adjust the depth at which I want to see the structure. I can see superficial structures, I can see deeper structures, and this is a most advanced scanning device, which they call it as Butterfly, and it works with the help of a mobile phone as a screen, and it can store, it can record. This is nothing less than a most sophisticated ultrasound instrument what we are using at present. Yes. Now, there is another thing, navigation. Today, we have such tiny cameras as the size of a rice grain, and they can be inserted into the blood vessels, and they can be made to see. I mean, we can actually navigate through the blood vessels in all the 360-degree direction, and we can actually get into an aorta or a blood vessel as it is shown here, and we can actually navigate. I mean, like we can see the surface of the aorta through this cannula type cameras. That is invasive. This is invasive, so they can navigate through the blood vessels and the human body structures. This is one of the indigenously built Indian device. Again, I think it is a Bangalore-based device. During COVID time, this device by name DOSI, this was a package. This package actually can read. I mean, it is a device which has to be kept below the pillow. This DOSI device is a device which has to be kept below the patient's pillow, and it can measure many things like heart rate, respiration rate, oxygen saturation, sleep stages, stress recovery, and more. During COVID time, 1,900 plus COVID ICU patients were monitored with this device. And DOSI is working with plus 25 hospitals in India at the moment. So this is just a little old information. Last year I collected this. Present information I did not know. I came to know this one. This is a contactless patient monitoring system. No contact. Contactless patient monitoring system. This I got it through the newspaper in the last year during the COVID time. And recent information I don't have. This is the innovation for the need of the hour they did. We are proud to be Indians. Actually, there are a lot of innovations happening. The rate of innovations globally, India is leading. Actually, many innovations are coming. So this is another easy check device which I wanted to tell you, and it can measure many things. The pulse oxy instrument, you know, it can give you saturation. So this device not only just gives saturation, it can give hemoglobin, blood glucose, creatine, and bilirubin all in one device. It is optical principle again. Spectrophotometric technique. It takes 10 seconds. That's all. Near this black port, what you have to insert your finger, and this links with the Bluetooth, links through the Bluetooth to the mobile phone, and the data is sent to the cloud, and the data is analyzed, and a report sheet is generated, and within a minute, the report sheet comes. Amazing. Which takes hours together to do all these tests. And the cost factor for this is nothing. No chemicals involved here, and no blood is required. And it just measures in minute, 1 minute, less than a minute, and it gives the report. And it can actually make, I'm trying to say blood glucose. There are so many diabetic patients. So every 10 patients, if you take, at least 4 of them are diabetic, and 6 of them are hypertensive now in OPD cases. So diabetic is becoming a non-communicable major threat in India also because of the lifestyle change. Non-communicable disease. All young minds should concentrate on non-communicable disease. That is going to be the future for you. You will see only more of non-communicable diseases. How to handle them, monitor the physiological parameters like early detection, management. All these things are very, very important now. Hemoglobin, anemia, one of the major problem in Indian scenario in village setup. They don't have proper nutrition. So anemia can be screened. You can screen 1,000 people in one day with this instrument and no chemicals are required. And the cost factor is only the cloud maintenance, which is about 20 rupees per test. This is available. This is a Orissa based product. I'm actually using this device for my research. I'm just validating this device at multi-center trial. If anybody is interested to do this, right now I'm collaborating with one hospital called BGS Global Hospital in Bangalore and St. John's in Bangalore. And one more, I'm planning to do one in Pondicherry. And then I'm planning to do one in Sri Ramachandra Porur also. So multi-center trials, I'm just waiting for the device to come because they have just started manufacturing. If anybody is interested in your institute, I can consider that also as one of the center for this multi-trial validation. Okay. In our institute also, we are doing this validation. I mean, just to see how it is behaving, how good it is, how it is a correlation between the gold standard and this instrument, so that we can actually implement. This is a screening tool, basically. It's not a quantitative, it is a semi-quantitative or qualitative, we can say. Okay. I think these terms I'm using very carefully. Quantitative means you get exact numbers. At this junction, I would like to say quantitative. How much to quantify? Do I need the blood pressure to be read in 3 decimal value? No. Even one number is enough. Like I can say 91, 92 or 121, 122, that's enough. Do I have to say 121.5 millimeter of mercury? Decimal value is not required. Even temperature also. You can read 1.1. I mean, 1 decimal accuracy is enough. So accuracy also, like weight, if you take 100 gram accuracy is more than enough. So this quantification, so this is number wise, we quantify the parameter. So here, this is a screening tool where we don't concentrate on the exact numbers, the range. We concentrate on the range, whether it is low or normal or high. So this device, but still it is worth, semi-qualitative. Okay. It gives qualitative results. And this is my contribution to the mankind. This is a device actually which we have patented, and this device is already in the market called NeuroTouch. Please, if anybody is interested in this, I think I have already had discussion with some of the faculty members from the physiology department of your institute also. NeuroTouch is a device. See, first year level, you all have done thermal perception, like temperature. How do you test the temperature perception at the practical in sensory system? You take a test tube, fill it with cold water, hot water, test it. It's again qualitative. We don't know exactly at what temperature. I can't change the temperature of the test tube water. So this is well known to the whole world. All the doctors are taught like this. We don't quantify what temperature, at what degree Celsius the receptor is able to perceive. So this was a burning problem for me during my undergraduate period. So I was always working. From 2002, I started working on this. And this was my 3rd state level award, which I got in Coimbatore. So this device is a 4-in-1 device, which can measure warm and cold temperature. The temperature can change. This is an ultra modern device, all digitized, which has a mobile application, also the cloud technology, same thing. Now every medical device is implementing mobile phone as an interface, and also cloud technology is used, data is stored, and data is retrievable. So right now for this particular instrument, we have got 25,000 data points around India. This can measure temperature threshold of warm and cold and vibration perception. We use only tuning fork. This is how we are teaching the undergraduate students. I'm sure you also would have been taught with the tuning fork technique for the perception of vibration in the joints. I'm not talking about Renes test or Weber's test. That is again a very age-old technology of Weber's test, Renes test. We have sophisticated digital audiometry now. So we have got even audiometry on the mobile phone also. Some apps are available to find out the threshold at different frequencies. This all requires exploration. That's all. So this device can do tactile, that is a hair aesthesiometer test, which can quantify and temperature, cold and warm and vibration. And also it has got an IR thermometer, all in one, just a portable small device, like a handheld device with a chargeable battery and all that. So this is my contribution. It is available in the market. Okay. This is how the tests are done on the feet. Why are we doing this? Screening tool. For diabetic patients that develop peripheral neuropathy, if the peripheral neuropathy is not diagnosed and precautions are not taken in early stage, they'll end up in ulcers. When the ulcers come, they become non-healing ulcers because of the uncontrolled sugar levels, and the chances are there they may go for amputation. This is the problem. So how can we save cutting of legs? When I came to Nellore, actually, I used to see a lot of diabetic patients having ulcers, and moving to Chennai for treatment with hyperbaric oxygen treatment, where they used to shell out lakhs of rupees to save the leg. So early detection, it's best. Early detection is best in medicine. Detect them early, screen many people, detect them early, and try to avoid the complications. So this is the contribution which I gave. We got the first grand award for this in Hyderabad in the year 2017, November. This was conducted by MIT again in Hyderabad. MIT is from USA. Okay. So a lot of judges were involved. I was a team leader for this particular hackathon. I think you might understand hackathon means hack something within hours. Like they gave us 48 hours to develop some medical device and prove the proof of concept. So this was proved as a proof of concept in 17, and the product is available in 1919. After 2 years of hard work, we were able to bring it out to the community as a product. This is another major contribution. Again, this is patented. This is my contribution to the medical profession. The hyperbaric oxygen treatment is a treatment where a non-healing diabetic ulcer is put into the chamber. I mean, the whole human body is put into a hyperbaric chamber. That is, the atmospheric pressure is increased to 2 times or 2.5 times. That is, the oxygen partial pressure is increased. So the person will be inside the chamber. The oxygen partial pressure, when it is increased with the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, the healing rate will increase. So I started working on this. It's a very expensive treatment. So what I did is local oxygen treatment. So this has completed clinical third phase clinical trial. The first phase clinical trial was completed in Manipal. Second phase clinical trial was done in St. John's. Third phase clinical trial was done in Narayana Hrudayalaya in Bangalore. And now this product is available for commercial use. What is this doing? It's called a topical or local oxygen therapy. One word is important there: warm oxygen therapy. It is not just oxygen. So pure oxygen is actually generated by electric generator. This particular box generates the pure oxygen by just plugging into the electrical point. It's a catalytic action. So it separates the existing air into nitrogen and oxygen. Nitrogen is thrown out, oxygen is concentrated here. It's also called as oxygen concentrator. This is used by many asthma patients today. Okay, the same concentrator is used, and it is heated up to 42 degrees centigrade, and it is projected to the ulcer area, and the whole limb is heated to 42 degree, and the treatment is given for 90 minutes. We proved clinically that the efficacy of this treatment is in par or even better than hyperbaric oxygen treatment. This is one of the biggest achievements which I have contributed to the mankind, and many patients have undergone this treatment so far, and we have got very good results, and we have got several awards for this also. And amputations we have reduced. I mean, we have actually minimized the amputations, or some of the patients had to no amputation was done for them. Like we could actually tackle to the grade 3 level ulcers also. So this is one of the thing, warm oxygen therapy treatment modality for diabetic non-healing ulcers. And this is another recent thing which I took it as a challenge topic for my PhD student. You all know pupil. Pupil is actually has got a constrictor and a dilator muscle, which shows the dilation is the sympathetic and the constriction is the parasympathetic nerve supply. And it is a part of the autonomic nervous system. Constriction, dilation. You know, pupillary light reflex or light response. It is one of the brainstem response. Also, reflex. Basically, it's a reflex. This can be used as a sensitive autonomic function evaluation test, which can be replacing the HRV, heart rate variability spectral analysis. So, heart rate variability spectral analysis, I think many people around the world are doing. It's also equally simple, but we have to record the ECG with an accuracy of RR interval with a 1 millisecond accuracy. And then we analyze how well the heart rate is changing. You know, at this junction, I'll try to tell you the heart rate has to change depending on the need. It should not be, I can tell you for the young minds to understand, you imagine you buy a two-wheeler. If the two-wheeler goes only in one speed, would you like it? It should be possible to increase the speed by giving acceleration, and you should be able to decelerate. That is, you should be able to reduce the speed of the vehicle, increase the speed and decrease the speed. It is required for you to drive, to get a good control on driving. If your heart beats continuously at a constant rate, is it a good idea? No. When you are in stress, it should cope up. It should increase the speed of beating. When you are sleeping, it should slow down. So the heart should increase the speed and decrease the speed as per the need. This is what the autonomic function is supposed to do. This autonomic function fails in aged people or in diseased people like diabetic. So how do we identify that? So we were trying to measure the heart rate variability. That is the autonomic test we were doing all these years. But this concept of pupil response, which has got a pure sympathetic and parasympathetic component, we used infrared videography. Infrared videography, that is in total darkness. In total darkness, human eye cannot see, but the digital camera can see. An IR camera can see even in 100% darkness. So we created a virtual box with 100% darkness, and then the camera could see the dilated pupil, and we could give a stimulus, and we could actually see the constriction response and the dilated. This is totally under darkness, which is illuminated with IR, infrared light. So this was my project, and this project was successfully completed by the PhD student in 2021 January. It received a best thesis award out of 2,600 contestants for the DST projects. Under the DST, Department of Science and Technology, my PhD student got this first place for this pupillary light reflex project, which was his PhD topic. And he did studies on diabetic patients, and he got several awards also. And the device was built by me again. This is more sensitive and very easy test. Within about 30 seconds, we can do this test, and the images of the pupil are analyzed by computer image analysis software. This is another domain. You all have studied in reproductive physiology. The cervical fern pattern indicates the fertile stage. We did a study with the undergraduate students. Actually, I was having a second year MBBS student. Two girls actually came forward to do this study. They were collecting the saliva sample every day in the morning and making a smear and giving it to me. Believe it or not, I have taken these pictures with just ordinary Nokia camera of mine with a 2 megapixel with ordinary light microscope. So this one pattern is very, very clear. We compared it with the basal body temperature also. It indicates fertile status of the female. That is, pre-ovulatory and post-ovulatory phase is very well indicated. So family planning can be done, or in infertility clinics also this can be used. And there is no cost incurring. It's a digital image, just the saliva sample on a glass slide, and then it can tell you the fertility status. It is very, very simple thing. And this also got a social relevance award in Bangalore from one of the engineering team who developed a software to detect the level of fern pattern. Digital cloths. So now the t-shirts, whatever you are wearing, now they are embedded with biosensors. They can pick out ECG, they can pick out EMG, they can pick out the acceleration of your hands and the joint movements and your position, location. So many physiological parameters on body temperature, everything can be, and even the calories burned. All these things can be documented by these biosensors, which are embedded in the cloths. They are called wearable. This US military has already implemented this type of cloths. They are called smart cloths. So smart chairs are there, smart cloths are there. So they can monitor this many parameters, like so many, like as I mentioned, biopotentials and many other things. And also the like they can actually monitor other parameters like PEFR also, peak expiratory flow rate and things like that. And remotely, there we talk, remotely monitor physiological parameters, including Bluetooth connected devices and mobile applications. So everything is become digitized now. There is nothing which is non-digital now. Everything is digital. So measure peak flow and exhaled nitric oxide levels, fraction, and then physical activity. That is, by measuring the physical activity, we can say how many calories he is burning, and air pollution levels. So many things can be monitored by this digital era. So then paperless artificial intelligence has come now. They are implementing artificial intelligence into the biological parameters, whatever is acquired, it will compare and contrast, and this artificial intelligence is used. Recently, I read an article, they used a postage stamp sized panel, solar panel. Imagine a postage stamp size solar panel. They could actually generate enough electricity with that, which can run the pacemakers. The pacemaker is an artificial pacemaker which is implanted in the human body, and this solar panel could run the pacemaker without a battery. And similar devices that now require bulky batteries. Actually, nowadays we have got batteryless pacemaker also. Based on the piezo phenomena, it can generate on its own the power required to run the pacemaker, but they are very expensive. But this is a cheaper version. This was done by some Swiss researchers 2 years ago. This one I already mentioned, malaria, dengue, chikungunya, all the three. This is assured immunological diagnostic kit to screen 3 parameters in just 10 minutes. So nothing is missed out. Imagine if we have to do malaria diagnosis, we were doing this smear, and then we used to do that JSB staining, and then we used to check in thick smear and thin smear the parasites, and now the fluorescent technology came, and in a fluorescent microscope we were detecting the parasites. So this is nothing. In 10 minutes, no microscope is required, no chemicals are required, just the kit and put the blood. That's all. It will give positive, negative. So 3 tests in one. Such a wonderful thing. It is just like a preg test. Within 10 minutes, it will give the results. No chemicals are required. It can be done at home, or it can be done at any point of care place. And this is coronary angiography. This is coronary angiography, which is done by a computer, a robot. The cardiologist is sitting in some other place, and the robot is actually doing this procedure. It's a telemedicine, a surgical telemedicine. Like there's a C-arm, and the patient is there, and this is actually injecting the dye, and you can see coronary angiogram. This is happening. So this is because of the 5G mobile network. The internet speed should be really high. Then only this kind of telerobotic percutaneous coronary intervention can be done. So this is happening in some developed countries right now. And this is another 5G application to conduct real-time teleretinal laser photocoagulation. Yagi laser is used for photocoagulation of retinal hemorrhage in diabetic patients or hypertensive patients. So again, 5G technology can be used for this kind of treatments, remote treatments. And this is terahertz technology, which can detect the heartbeats remotely with the millimeter wave. This is millimeter wave technology, also called as terahertz technology. At a distance of 5 meters, without even touching the subject, we can measure, like just like how we can measure the body temperature at 5-meter distance, this can measure the heart rate and also the respiratory rate. See, this person is actually here, and he is actually, his data is coming on the computer screen. You can see his breathing rate is 14 and no instruments are hooked onto his, no electrodes, no instruments. And he is sitting on a chair and his heart rate is being displayed and his respiratory rate is being displayed. In medicine, it is very, very useful for small babies, which we cannot put electrodes for a premature baby and the baby moves and then the wires will come in the way. So this baby is sleeping happily without any electrodes and you can see the breathing rate and you can see the heart rate. This is again possible. Application is possible. In airports, if a person is walking through the security check, we can check for metal detection by moving the metal detector. If a person is walking through this thing, the window, his heart rate can be detected without touching him. And once they detect the heart rate, if it is more, then suspicion can be raised. If a person is doing some illegal activity, his heart rate will be very high. So we can suspect and we can call him and then we can do this window can actually measure many things like heart rate, respiratory rate, body temperature, body composition, height, weight, HRV for 2 minutes. All this it can do in one stretch. When it stands there for 2 minutes, so many things it can do. And there is a new concept like people think that you don't get new ideas at all. This thinking cap they developed. They have an electromagnetic coil here and this particular pulsations when they are given, magnetic field stimulates the neural cells to think and get some new brilliant ideas. So this came up, scientists have developed this and it is under research still. It is not come into existence. If this was in existence, then everybody would have bought these caps and own and they get some wonderful ideas, correct? So it is all in process. And this blue brain, you all have heard Bluetooth. This is blue brain. A person's neural processing algorithm can be stored in the computer through EEG. And if this person is not there physically also, this neural processing technique, which is stored in the computer, can actually be used to get answers. Supposing if you ask my mobile number, I'll tell you. And if you ask my name, I'll tell you. So without my presence, the computer can tell the mobile number if you ask a question or the house address, or after the demise of the person also this can work. It is called virtual brain storage. Imagine for the great scientists, if we had a virtual brain stored in the system, how many more questions we could have asked them, how many more solutions they could have given us. So this is virtual brain. Blue brain is actually supported by the IBM. So these people are supporting the research. And then this technology uses nanobots for scanning the human brain. And they can actually, even after the demise of the person, we can actually utilize, say for example, to make this understand, I'll tell you, if you ask someone, there are two options for you. You have a staircase, you have a lift. Which way will you take? The person will answer, I want to go by staircase. So that is the way he reacted to my question. So if I ask the virtual brain the same question, the virtual brain gives the same answer, like I would like to take staircase, because it is his brain which has been downloaded. I mean, the brain has been stored and the way the neural activity goes on and the algorithm, how it works. So that is called blue brain technology. And today, a person imagining hello in his mind can display hello on the screen, and they can control the video games, and by thought process they can control video games. So this brain implants can turn imagined handwriting into the text. This is all happening. It is not a fiction anymore. It is not a fiction. See, some of the gesture cameras are there now. If you do like this, it will take a click. It will click your photo. And on the screen, if you just take two fingers and do like this, it will zoom. You do like this, it will compress. And you do like this, all gestures, touch screen gestures are making so many things now. So all this artificial intelligence has been embedded, virtual reality and augmentation. All these things are no longer fiction. And one day may come, they say my brain is hacked. I think Avatar movie you have seen, the animal which he flies, he will be connecting his the supposed to be, it's a fiction movie, supposed to be his neurons connecting to the neurons of the animal. Like it just synchronizes with his needs, and it just calms down and it behaves as he wants. I think in the audience, at least some of you would have seen Avatar movie, a 3D movie, which was a fictitious movie. So one person I have in this institute who's actually always behind me, he says, "Sir, can you create a port here somewhere so that you can put a USB device, I mean USB pen drive, and download all the memory, and you can transfer the memory from the brain to the pen drive, from the pen drive to the brain." Imagine, this is an imagination. We don't know, a day may come like that. So wherein a port can be created or wireless transfer can be done. Wireless transfer of what the other person is thinking, I can get it through wireless method, what that person is thinking. We don't know. These are the possibilities. Physiology. Again, the fundamental is physiology, how the neurons work, how the body functions, how the cells function. That is all is important. Now, the fastest camera, existing technology, can capture 10 million frames per second. So this is what the existing technology is. But today the scientists have found which can capture 100 billion frames per second. You may wonder, sir, what are you talking about, this photography frames and all that? See, our screen, the screen which you are seeing on the computer is 100 frames per second. Do you know that? It is refreshed 100 frames every second, but you can't make out, but your eyes are not able to identify that. But some of the sophisticated cameras which capture fast motion, like quick bullet moving or a glass breaking, you need 1000 frames per second. So if you have higher speed photography, you can capture the small events which are happening in nanoseconds. So in nanoseconds, what is happening, you can pick up if the photography speed is faster. So this can be played in slow motion and you can analyze what is happening. So in medical profession, if you want to understand the sodium ion moving into the cell or potassium ion getting out of the cell, this can be used. And to understand the diseases and reflect cellular environmental conditions such as pH and oxygen pressure, this photography technique can be used. High speed, very, very high speed. And if I tell you the capability of this 100 billion frame per second is, light ray is nothing but photon. Can you see the light moving in the space? No, because it moves so fast, 3 lakh kilometers per second. So this photography will help you to see the movement of light beam, how it moves. You take the photography and play it in slow motion so that you can see how the light beam is moving. A photon is moving in the space. So this is the achievement what the human has done. 100 billion frames per second, unimaginable. So we can do a lot of this is looking, some of the things which I told you now, they all look like fictitious, but they are reality. They are already there. So this has to be implemented in the forthcoming research. Okay. After telling so much about digital advantages and all these things, who will not like if your child is playing with a phone? The child is actually mimicking the adults, like talking something, holding the phone, and then you enjoy. It's like a fun at some point. Children using phone is no longer a fun, particularly small children. Live phone. I mean, a phone which is active should not be given to small children, which is very difficult to control now. Major challenge. Adults, we knowingly we are using the phone. It's a deadly slow killer. It's a slow poison. Over years, it is going to create massive problem. The radiation hazard. It is not ionizing radiation. I am telling you this also. It is a mini microwave which can heat up the tissue. The neural cells can be heated up. I think all of you would have experienced, if you talk for a long time, your ear gets heated up. It's a mini microwave which insults your neural cells. You repeatedly insult the neural cells, it can develop a tumor. That's the basis of cancer. So what I'm trying to say is, it will help you in many ways, and this is the danger of mobile phone. This raises the temperature by 0.2 degree in the neural cells, and even 4D scan, ultrasound scan, For pregnant females, what they do, 4D ultrasound scan. 2D is initially, then 3D has come. Now 4D ultrasound scan also has come, which gives more details. But 4D ultrasound scan also raises the temperature. It is ultrasound, but still it raises the body temperature. I mean, the baby's temperature increases. So it is not advisable to do 4D scan many times. Similarly, when you use this mobile phone, the temperature of the neural tissue increases by the mobile phone waves. When the mobile phone is in silent, when the mobile phone is not used, it is as good as a radio. But when it is active state, that is when you are talking to someone, the transmitter is on and the receiver is on. The transmitter is a culprit which actually gives the waves which can heat up the tissue. So this is the radiation hazards. I will not get into this. You may get all these things in the media, but there is a major hazard which is anticipated, which is going to come. Already they are seeing congenital abnormalities, PCOD cases, and stress related, unexpected hypertension, unexpected stress in the mind. All this is coming up because of this cell phone radiation only. There are a lot of things which I have listed here. Headaches, impaired immune system, most important. Impaired immune system, tumors of hearing, no. Break in blood-brain barrier, reduced melatonin, genetic damage, interference with pacemaker, melanoma of the eye, pressure or tingling in the head, memory loss, brain tumor. Do you want to lose your memory? No, you want to pass your exams. So be careful. Please restrict your usage of mobile phone very limitedly. Don't use too much. Otherwise, it will disturb your memory. Your sleep pattern is disturbed. Melatonin production is disturbed. And DNA alteration or damage is possible. All this research is going on. The results will be out very shortly. Changed brain electrical activity. Electrical activity of the brain is actually, it's all electrical in nature. The mobile phone works like electrical radiation only, electromagnetic radiation only. Cardiovascular stress will be there. And eye problems. You call it a screen syndrome now. During COVID time, every student used to complain, headache, burning sensation, not able to sleep. Screen syndrome. They were calling it a screen syndrome. What is the way? Every 20 minutes you get up, give rest to your eye, wash your eyes, and then again restart. Don't sit continuously for more than 20 minutes in front of the screen. Particularly the smaller mobile phones, which many students were using for Zoom classes. It is a bad idea. Please, even now, if you are not aware of this, my suggestion, personal suggestion is use a bigger screen, which will cost about 5,000 minimum. Instead of going for a 30,000 mobile phone, which is very small screen, go for a bigger screen when you are on Zoom classes. A bigger screen is much less painful to the eyes. Otherwise, you all would have developed short-sightedness within no time and fatigability. You feel very tired because physical activity is not there. You don't move out of the chair. And whole day you are stuck to the chair. 8 hours you are stuck to the chair. And 8 hours you are sleeping. And no physical activity. Your food requirement will be less because you are not doing physical activity, but your brain is burning so much of calories. So all disturb physical activity. So these are the health effects. Even these are the things, some of the effects on pregnancy also. Children absorb more than 10 times than the adults. You can see the comparison here, a 5-year-old child and a 10-year-old child and an adult. The effect of the mobile phone radiation is comparatively less. I have seen one of the close friend of Dr. Anurag Kurpad, Young Vernon. He actually developed brain tumor and he died. He was using the cell phone for almost 10 hours a day. So the number of hours what you use, the risk goes on proportionately increasing. So be careful. I'm just giving a warning signal or advisory note to all the students and all the younger generation. Restrict the use of mobile as much as possible. Use hands free, and as far as possible use landline for communication for long time. Okay, so this is an unexpected headache and tiredness, fatigue, all these things are possible. And also the angle of this screen, this is just an advice again. The students must actually sit in a right posture, which is ergonomically designed chair. And these are all the tips and advices what I am telling you. It affects your joints. It causes back pain. And you should never use the phone in this posture. This girl is actually, see, you can see the position. Whenever you are reading some text in the mobile phone, your head, that's called a neck syndrome. Mobile phone posture or neck syndrome. Children enjoy looking at the mobile even during the bedtime, and they get strained to the eyes. And these are the postures, unusual, awkward postures, which the children are getting used to it. And the other symptoms like headache, stress, physical fatigue, poor sleep patterns, obesity, compromised immunity, all these are possible. This is a stress leading to health problems. So all your pituitary hormones will get affected. Under physiology, you study the pituitary, anterior and posterior pituitary, and the melatonin from the pars media. So all this get disturbed. Everything gets disturbed. Okay. And social media has the worst impact on the behavior. So it affects the human psychology. And they have, some people have gone for selfies and they have fallen accidentally, and this psychological problems are there because of the social media, and depression, anxiety, all these things are possible. Why we compare ourselves on social media? Why should we do that? What we are, we are. Why you should compare? So I think that concept should come. And this is media, digital media on food habits. Many people actually sit on a table and they are trying to order something, and they don't know how much they have taken, or whether, see, they are doing two tasks at one time. I think this is a common scenario in most of the houses. They are sitting on the plate and seeing on the mobile screen, and they are listening to some TV news and they are seeing on the mobile screen. So all this is not good. So if you have any questions regarding my presentation, it is an innovation. It's a need of the hour, what is required. So if you have some ideas in your mind, I can nurture it. It can be a very simple idea, but it will be of great impact for the community. See, as I told you, fern pattern, it's very simple, saliva, fern pattern, but it has a great impact. The way I did is digital. So similarly, temperature measurement, it is quantified. Similarly, warm oxygen. So like this, it can be a simple, small idea which others may even laugh at you. There are so many projects which I am doing still, but the time doesn't allow me to share many things. It's already I have crossed more than my stipulated time. If I go on talking, I think one day is also not enough for the work which is going on even today. And if you have any idea of collaboration or any new ideas in your mind which you want to actually try it out and test it out, or you want to bring it into reality, I can always help them and I can drive them. And I hope this motivational talk of physiological parameters monitoring in a digital way has given you some impact, so that you also will be having 101 ideas in your mind. Try to share it. And as an engineer, I can try to give you a solution if it is possible. Otherwise, I'll tell, no, this is not possible in my hands. And at least I can guide you where to go, how to go about. I'm sure there are 101 brilliant brains in this group, but we have to explore. That is possible only. See, study is also important, but simultaneously you should explore your inherent talent also. And see, many of you may be musicians. You may be very good in some musical instruments, or many of you are very good in debate competitions, or some of you are good in sports. Some of you are good in gymnastics. See, each person has, some of you are maybe good in singing, or some of you may be good in cooking. So you have to explore. Even cooking science can be taken care. Diabetic patients, what type of food can be given. So everywhere science helps you. Okay. So implementing the way that matters. Okay, fine. So I hope with that, I thank you once again for the organizing committee, and particularly for Dr. Saravanan for giving me this golden opportunity to share my thoughts and my achievements and my views to all these young, energetic minds of today who are in the digital era. Thank you once again.